Car finance commission mis-selling. Are you owed thousands of pounds? Now, everyone who's bought a car, a van, a camper van or a motorbike since 2007 may be eligible to join the 2.5 million people who've already complained. This is because of a landmark court ruling, which means millions more people are potentially eligible, including some who've already been turned down. Yet how do you do it? And should you do it? I'll be taking you through everything you need to know. And I'm pleased to say the boss of the regulator behind all this, Nikhil Rathi, Chief Exec of the Financial Conduct Authority, the FCA, has joined me, and I will put your questions on this to him too. Then, in the news you can use, it's the last chance to apply for winter fuel payments and the last chance to apply for 3 banks up to £200 switching bonuses. There's a new longest no-fee 0% transfer card, balance transfer card, an easy reclaim if you travelled on South West trains, and 15p veg for Christmas is back in the supermarkets. So now, for a woman who, if she saw cheap tomatoes getting away from her, could easily catch up. Last week's audience were much better. The wonderful Jeanette Quatchi.
Oh, my goodness. Martin is here all night, everybody. And for the last time in 2024, send in your questions on anything for Martin or on car finance for Nikhil. You can tweet us on X or post your questions on Blue Sky using the hashtag Martin Lewis, or email martinlewis@itv.com. And remember, if we don't use your question tonight, we may use it in a future show. And of course, a large, lovely, warm welcome to our studio audience. Please do
wave your wallets, everybody! There we go. Right, we're ready. We're up for it.
OK, so now, Martin, last week, credit scoring.
Yes.
Lots of people took action. We've had some fantastic successes. Look at this one in from Erica. She's up here. So Erica's here. She says, thank you. I now know how to remove my ex of 11 years from my credit score. I'll be sending off the notice of disassociation to finally rid myself of him for good.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's an obvious subtext in that one, isn't there? But we'll just talk on the finances for a moment. Yeah, you are jointly linked to someone on your credit file if you have any joint products. So if you no longer have joint products with them, send the credit reference agencies a notice of disassociation. And that way, when you apply for something, they can only look at your data. They can't look at your ex-partners or somebody else you had a joint accounts with data as well. So it's an important thing to do.
And this is coming from Bonbees on social. So happy I tuned in, hoping to apply for a mortgage in the new year. Now I can up my chances of getting a decent deal.
Credit scoring is really important for mortgage applicants, as is affordability scoring that I talked about last week too. Arguably more important, because the regulator is over there, mandates that they must do an affordability score. So if you're going to be applying for a mortgage or a remortgage next year or so, and you missed last week, I would watch it back on ITVX if I were you.
OK, well, plenty to get into tonight. So let's get into your first part of your big briefing.
Now, this is all about car finance commission complaints, and it is complicated, and there's 2 different ways that this can be done. So I want to start with an overview where I'm literally going to signpost you through what I'm going to talk about in much more detail later. So if you don't understand it here, don't worry, we're coming back in more detail. This all started really in January 2021. There we go. Back then, the regulator, the FCA, banned discretionary commission arrangements. That's where dealers and brokers could increase the amount of interest that people were charged, and the finance firm would therefore give them more commission. That was banned back in January 2021. Then we move on to 3 years later, hopefully, if the graphic keeps up with me. There we go. Where the regulator then launched the final stages of an investigation into past DCA mis-selling. So the same thing, but now they're not just banning it, they're saying we think people were doing it wrong in the past. And these DCAs were used in about 40% of car finance deals. So if the money came back, that could be £10 billion paid out. And at that point, it said firms don't need to process the complaints. People could file complaints, but it doesn't need to deal with them until it reports in September 2024. Well, that September 2024 is gone because lots of complexity have happened since, and now that's been moved. It's now expecting to report in May 2025, and firms will have to process the complaints by December 2025. So after that, then the shock that no one was expecting. Share prices fell, panic amongst car finance firms, a landmark Court of Appeal ruling on car finance commission disclosures. Now, we were talking about DCAs before. This is separate, so there are 2 separate issues going on in car finance commission. I'm calling this commission disclosures, DCA's commission disclosures. This is the fact that if lenders didn't tell you the full information about commission, including how much, it's not legal. This applies to all car finance deals where there were commission. That's about 99% of cases. If all this came back, it would be £30 billion. So on the back of that, we go to the next one, which is the regulator then says, OK, well, this is big and it's all in the mix and everything's all swirling up here. It's doing a consultation to pause processing of all car finance commission complaints, effectively saying all car finance commission complaints are now going to be in the scope of a regulatory complaint, not just the initial DCA, all car finance commission complaints. That's in November 2024. That's reporting in 9 days' time. And then what will probably decide all the second stage of this, at least, or this new claim, the court claim, is an appeal is very likely to go to the Supreme Court of the Court of Appeal judgment. The car finance firms will be putting an appeal in, and then the Supreme Court will make a decision that finalises what's happening. We hope, because a lot of pressure is being put on, that that would be done, if it is happening, it'd be done quickly in spring or summer next year. So you can see we've got DCA, type complaint, and I'm going to talk you through in detail what they mean, and commission disclosure. Two different types of complaints going on here.
Understandably, so many questions have come in about this. This one's coming from Ian. What is the best way to look into car finance reclaiming, please? I've seen a few adverts, but don't want to get inundated with calls, emails, etc., or even worse, get scammed.
Well, I would very strongly say you do not need to pay anyone. You do not need to use a no-win, no-fee firm in order to do a car finance complaint. You can absolutely do this yourself. They can take up to 40% of your money off you. But let's ask the regulator. Nikhil, would you use a no-win, no-fee firm?
Martin, you're quite right. There's no need to pay anybody if you want to make a complaint to your lender.
Yeah, you can do this yourself. Do it yourself. So how are you going to do it? Well, that's what this programme's all about. I'm going to show you the DIY route now. Let me move on to the first bit. So, when we go through this, the graphic's being a bit slow behind me, let's talk discretionary commission arrangements. This is the original case, the regulatory case that came in January. You all following me? I know it's complicated, so I'm using my audience here to tell you if you can keep up. This is where lenders let brokers and car dealers increase the interest rate to increase their commission. Millions overpaid because of this without knowing. And crucially, you will not know if this happened to you. It is not on your documentation. You do not know. That's why it could be anyone who falls into the criteria I'll talk about in a moment. Now, the average claim could be £1,100, which is the difference between what you were charged and the minimum interest rate. That's what's being estimated, £1,100 per person. Could be bigger, could be smaller, depending on the size of the car. That's the difference, but it will be on what the regulator decides when it eventually finishes its investigation. And I would say there are decent odds here of a mass redress system. In other words, the regulator simply saying, OK, firms, you're going to have to pay out, a bit like PPI. Fair?
Look, I think it's more likely... I think it's more likely that there will be a redress scheme than when we started this work.
So you're more likely now?
Yeah, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's going to be as large as PPI. We're going to have to see what the courts say and then come to a view. Probably
not as large as PPI, but it's similar that firms have to do it, that they're going to be locked into it.
I think that we're looking at all of the cases, and it's more likely than when we started the work at the start of the year.
More likely, we'll take that. But I would strongly suggest you log your complaints now. We don't know what the result will be, but you do not want to be timed out because you didn't complain in time. So the sooner you get a complaint in, even though they don't have to deal with it, the less chance you have of being time barred. Now, this is going to get complicated. You could also do the commission disclosure complaint. You could start there. My best guess, forgive me, it's all I've got, is start here, not the commission disclosure route. Start with the DCA complaint. This is complex. This is uncharted territory. I'm going to summarise why. I've written about it in more detail. People can go and look that up if they want to. If you go the DCA route, then you've effectively got your DCA complaint, and then if the Supreme Court backs up the Court of Appeal, the regulator will almost certainly say you have to look at all factors, including that when a complaint's in. Yeah?
That's right.
Yeah. So effectively, you've got a bog-off on complaint. You do the DCA complaint, and you've got the other one thrown in for free, if you like. And if the Supreme Court goes the other way and says the Court of Appeal was wrong, so you can't do the other type of complaint. That knocks out the other type of complaint, but your DCA complaint still exists, because that's a regulatory complaint, not a court complaint. The only way you might think the other way around is evidentially it's slightly easier on the commission disclosure route, because it's very easy. Did they tell you everything, either yes or no? This is a bit more complex. But in my view, and it's only my view, and you're not going to give me an answer on which way to go, but in my view, I think you're probably best off to start on the discretionary arrangement route. So I'm going to go with that system. But nobody knows yet because it's not finalised. Yeah,
We've got a question.
Sorry.
Yes, absolutely. Coming in from Susan here. Now, Susan's asking this. My husband had PCP on a car he bought in 2016. He's since died. Really sorry to hear that. But can I put a claim in my name?
Presuming you're the executor or the primary beneficiary of the will, absolutely yes. The claim, forgive the phrasing, does not die with the person. It can be passed on as part of the estate. So let's go into that now. Let's go into DCA claims. Who is eligible? Well, first, motor vehicle, car van, motorbike or camper van. Eligible dates. If this is financed from April 2007 till DCAs were banned, which is the 28th of January 2021. If you've had car finance since, well, you might be in the other route, which I'm going to talk about in part 2, the commission disclosure route. Finance types, PCP and hire purchase, not leasing, which is officially personal contract hire, not leasing. The vehicle had to be primarily for personal use. Commuting is fine, but if you're using it for the business all the time, that doesn't count in this one. It does apply, as Susan there, I should say, sorry for your loss, Susan. It does apply if the owner has passed away. It also applies if you paid the vehicle off or if you sold the vehicle. You were still missold if they find out you were missold, but that's still eligible. And if you had multiple deals, you could be due multiple payouts. I would do one complaint per firm. So if you had 3 car finance deals with one firm, you should be able to do that in one complaint. But if you had 3 car finance deals with different firms, you would need to make 3 different complaints, but you're perfectly eligible to do that. Have you got more?
Yep, Natasha's got a question. Quite a good one, actually. Are the complaints only on cars, or would we be eligible with a caravan?
So I'm assuming we mean a caravan tugged behind a car, not a camper van. That isn't a motor vehicle. It doesn't have an engine. So therefore, it isn't in this. But if you feel you were missold in that way, that just means there's no pause on it. You could still make a formal complaint to the finance firm, and if it rejects you, you could take it to the financial ombudsman, and it would have to deal with your case because there's no pause on complaining. So it isn't in the scope of what's being talked about, but you still may have been missold. That's possible.
OK, we can move on.
OK, shall I go on?
Yes, please.
OK, so then let's talk about how you complain. Your complaint is to the lender in general, not the car dealer, not the broker, the person you paid for the finance. So it could be Barclays, it could be Black Horse, it could be BMW or Mercedes-Benz Financial Services. It's worth noting not all firms did DCAs, and you can find lists online or in some of the online tools telling you these firms didn't do it, so there's no point doing a DCA complaint with them. What do you do to complain? Well, you contact your lender about 2 things, but you can do it both in one. First, that's simple. The big question here, did I have a DCA? You don't know. The only way to know is to ask, so you ask. And then you say, well, if I did, I want you to lodge a timestamp complaint. Don't worry about timestamp. It doesn't mean you have to do anything. It just means you've got it in their system that you're complaining and it's stuck in there and it's registered. Now, help to do this. The FCA's got info on its website, and some firms have complaint firms. My online tool will draft a free template email letter that I wrote up for you. 2.5 million people have used it so far. This is big. And as we've already mentioned, I wouldn't pay a no-win, no-fee firm. Just to say, I've noticed some of those firms are using my name to advertise about car finance complaints. I do not suggest you use a no-win, no firm. They shouldn't be doing that. If any one of them are doing that, I wouldn't touch them because clearly they're lying if they're implying that anyway. So you can do it yourself for free.
OK. More questions coming on this,
yes.
Martin. Pamela, I've just seen the new info on Car Finance Commission. We previously complained to my car company and we were told we were not included in this particular commission scheme. Reading the new information, where there now may be a case of any commission being missold, should we now complain again or wait until the ruling in a couple of weeks' time?
I don't think the ruling's going to make any difference in a couple of weeks' time. We know where we are. So whether you should or shouldn't do it, we'll talk about in the second half. But absolutely, if you don't have a discretionary commission arrangement and your lender has told you you don't, you can then move on and go into the second part if you choose and make the other form of complaint. And you would want to do that because your initial complaint won't count because that was about discretionary commission arrangements. Right. So yes, and we'll be talking about whether you should or shouldn't in part 2. That's the big one. That's the new stuff. That's about the court decision. That's what I'm coming to next. I hope you're following me. Let's keep going.
We do hope you're following, but there's lots more to come on car finance, and we're putting your questions to the Financial Conduct Authority CEO, Nikhil, so don't go anywhere.
Welcome back. We're talking car finance commission reclaiming. I've talked about the first category, which is discretionary commission arrangements. That's the start point. I'm going to move on to the new one, commission disclosure. What's coming in online?
So much coming in on social media. People are very happy that you're covering this, but lots to get through. So let's get to our virtual wall. We can say good evening to Fiona. Fiona, what's your question for Martin?
Hi, Martin. Both my husband and I registered a claim relating to previous car finance. The claim wasn't replied to. I followed up a couple of times with emails, but nothing back. What would your advice be to get our claim acknowledged?
So they haven't even acknowledged it?
No, not at all.
OK, well, now, that was an issue in the early days when a lot of firms weren't acknowledging. In the surveys I've done, the worst firm is 5% unacknowledged. So you may well be with them. We won't bother mentioning them on air because it doesn't help necessarily. Well, that's difficult. You know, if only I had someone here who was in charge of them all. So, look, Nikhil, they should be acknowledging. I mean, they don't have to deal with a complaint, but they should be acknowledging. She should be time-stamping, shouldn't they?
Absolutely. And Fiona, I can understand this must be really frustrating for you. There is strain on lenders because they're dealing with a lot of complaints. So we've given them more time to deal with those complaints all the way to December next year, but they should be acknowledging the complaint. So I'd encourage you to contact them again and ask for an acknowledgement. But also, you can be assured if you keep your records, you won't be disadvantaged because ultimately there is an ombudsman that will look at your complaint if the lender in the end doesn't acknowledge you.
So you need to keep timestamp records, you know, print them out, take a photograph,
Yep.
have your records that you kept, and then if you were to make a further complaint at the Ombudsman, you would say, look, they may not have replied to me for 4 months, but I complained at this point and they didn't reply. It's their fault. It should count from the point of complaint.
Absolutely.
OK, and well, you've heard that from, you know, the big boss of the regulator. Just take a recording of this, that'll do. Yeah, thank you very much. JK.
Thank you for your question, Fiona. Now, Martin, this is coming from Peter. Do we now have to contact our finance company with a new updated complaint, re this new ruling? Now, I'm going to assume here that Peter wasn't eligible for DCA. Does he need to do any more?
Well, if you weren't eligible, yes, you don't have a complaint on the new ruling, so you would need to start it like a new complaint. And I think that will be the process for many, because I'm suggesting you do a DCA, and then if you want to carry it on afterwards, then you restart at that point. So let me go to the second part of my big briefing. So this is a new one. Car finance, I'm calling it commission disclosure complaints. This Court of Appeal ruling in October was on all car finance commission, and it caused shockwaves. Share prices to fall, car finance firms to rewrite the documentation. I suspect, he won't say, but I suspect there was panic running around at the regulator. Commentators like me were going, what the? You know, it was really very shocking. This is what the Court of Appeal said. The brokers never obtained the claimant's fully informed consent to the payment. The claimants were not told that it would be paid, nor the amount, nor any other material facts about the commission. Translation: you weren't told all the facts, including how much the commission was. It's unlawful. Now, this is a precedent-setting court, the second highest court in the land, and that means this is now the law in the UK. It's common law. It has changed effectively what the law is. The law is that ruling. Now, the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, may disagree and thus change the law again. And I think, actually, if you look at the record, the Supreme Court does not always follow the Court of Appeal. It's not a done deal by any means. In many times in the past on big controversial cases, it's done a totally... I remember with bank charges, it went the wrong way for me in what I was campaigning on, and the Supreme Court overturned the Court of Appeal in that way. The application for the appeal to the Supreme Court has been put in. It hasn't necessarily accepted an appeal yet, but I think it would be quite unlikely in such a big, substantial, you know, £30 billion case that this didn't go to the big court in the land. So while there's such uncertainty, the regulator has paused complaints due to this. The result of its consultation will be on the 19th of December. In 9 days' time, our series will be over. We're doing this now. But you're going to pause, aren't you?
We expect that we will be pausing. Yeah, we're just deciding how long for.
Yeah, OK. They are pausing. The question is how long and exactly what counts. That's the most important thing you understand. Now, this could apply to all Car Finance Commission complaints. The aim of the pause, of course, is clarity. Once we know what the Supreme Court rules, then you can have fairness and transparency and the same type of consistent complaints all across the board. But just like the earlier one, you can still complain now. The pause says they don't have to deal with your complaint, but if you are going to complain this way, you would want to log a complaint now. How does the Supreme Court's decision affect you as a regulator? Do you have to follow it?
The Supreme Court's the final decision maker on what the law is. And we have to make sure the law is respected. So we'll wait to see where they come to in terms of taking the Court of Appeal case or not.
So there's a subtle distinction here. The Discretionary Commission, the DCAs, that's a sort of regulator-led, your plan, what you think is right or wrong. Here, you're effectively being led by the law and what's going on in the courts.
That's exactly right. So under our rules, we ban discretionary commission arrangements, and that's what we've been investigating. What the courts have been looking at, where there's been some uncertainty, is what they say is common law, and whether these commission arrangements should have been disclosed and whether there should have been consent from you if you took out a loan to that commission. That the Court of Appeal come to a ruling on that. The lenders have taken that to the Supreme Court. We'll have to see if the Supreme Court takes the case and what they say.
OK, so hopefully you understand the difference between the two cases, the DCA, the first one, regulator, and the commission disclosure, which is here. Am I moving on?
Yeah.
Right, let me carry on. OK, so who's eligible to complain? So what I'm doing is I'm looking at the regulator's rules as who's looking to put a pause on, because that effectively means they think they're the ones who have a complaint. This is a mirror page to what I did with DCAs. It's exactly the same people, so I'm not going to go through it step by step. The bits in red are the differences. So I'm going to talk about the differences, not where it's all the same. The dates. DCAs were banned in January 2021, but this ruling was only October 2024. So they were all operating this way, that they didn't effectively tell you what the commission was up till then. Then many of the big firms changed their rules and started disclosing commission then. Some of the smaller ones may not have done. So this one's going much later. It's going up to very recently, October this year. The other big change, I don't think he'll tell me this one, I'm giving a look, I don't think it's going to happen, is maybe leasing might be included in this, and we will know that in 9 days' time. We'll find out whether people who had leasing deals could be included in that complaint. We don't know now. Otherwise, it's exactly the same criteria as I explained to you in part one on DCAs.
And Stegless has got a question for you on this as well. Thanks for the update, Martin. Question, if one has already submitted a DCA-specific complaint, is there no further action to be eligible for the expanded Car Finance Commission complaints? We're going to assume that he did have a DCA, unlike the question before.
So this is the one with...
Yes.
I've done a DCA complaint, I've got a DCA, they've told me I've got a DCA, do I need to do a second complaint? Well, my answer would be no, because almost certainly if the Supreme Court rules and follows at the Court of Appeal, then you would have to incorporate that when you're looking at this complaint about DCA, wouldn't you?
That's right. So that complaint's already paused, and when firms look at it, they'll have to look at it in the round and follow the law.
Take everything into account.
That's right.
Yes, so you're done.
OK.
Right, you're done, am I, or do I carry on?
You can move on.
I carry on. Let's move on to the final one.
Carry on.
So how do you complain? We'll talk a non-court route. Going to court is we're talking about you'll go through a regulatory route at some point if this goes forward. Very similar to DCA. You complain to the lender here, slightly different question. Did I have commission, and if so, what type? Any type of commission. If you did and it wasn't fully disclosed, it almost never was, then you can request a complaint is logged. There's help available online, exactly the same help as I talked about earlier, including free template tools. Now, let's get to the sticky bit. Personally, I've got questions and worries about this form, this commission disclosure claims. With DCAs, there is an obvious lack of transparency and a hit to consumer choice. It's pretty obvious why. You didn't know they were putting your interest rate up. You didn't know it would be cheaper if you went to another dealer in the same. It's different. Now, this Court of Appeal ruling, I think, gives good clarity going forward that commissions on car finance should be disclosed. It sets a standard. But I worry if retrospective payback is ordered, it could be counterproductive. Why counterproductive? Well, first of all, we may see less availability of car finance and we may see higher prices. So there's much more of a balance here. Now, even if they're going to do that, for me, personal view, a test should be, was the commission declared, even if they didn't say the amount, and was it excessive? Not a test of just saying they didn't say the amount. So I do have concerns this may be pushing a little bit far. You'll hear my language difference. I'm saying put a DCA complaint in, and here I'm saying you can, and this is what you can do. That's a personal viewpoint, you take your own. But where are you on this? Do you see a difference between the two? Would you encourage people to push on both?
The car finance market matters to millions of people. Several million people are taking a loan out each year. And it's important that customers who've had agreements in the past are treated fairly, but also important, as you say, that the market works well in the future, because millions of people will want to access cars in the future too. So if you are satisfied with the deal you got, we're not suggesting that you complain. But of course, if you have a concern about what was disclosed to you, then you should register that with your lender. It will take some time to resolve because they're being paused and we're waiting for the court cases to work through. Overall, we want to make sure the market works well in the future too.
But do you see a difference? Like, I sort of have a between a DCA case and a commission disclosure, and sort of, because DCA, you didn't know what was going on. Do you think...
Absolutely. So we took the action in 2021 to ban discretionary commission arrangements for the reasons you described, because we thought that was harming consumers. And that was the area where we thought the most harm was, and that's why we banned it. So we think there is a difference, yes.
Yeah, so it's similar to me, how hard you're pushing people to go and do this, how hard the injustice. I won't be getting in my soapbox about this particular one, but I want to give you the information so you can decide if it's right for you. And I would be very interested to know what you think watching. We'll talk about commission disclosure, this second case, should people be complaining just because the technicality, the exact amount of commission, if you knew there was commission, wasn't said to you, and how much should people be getting back if you think they should get something back? Get in touch, let me know using #MartinLewis. We'll try and read a couple of them out later.
Yeah, please do get in touch. We can head back to the virtual wall, actually. Helen's got a quick question for you, Martin. Good evening, Helen.
Hello. Hi, Martin. So I took out a car finance deal back in 2018, but I don't have any of the paperwork. So I don't know how I can check if I'm eligible for the compensation scheme.
Well, the paperwork would be best. Do you know where it is? What did you moved house or something?
I think someone...
Let's leave it. I can tell you don't want to answer pod television. We'll move on.
No,
right,
no.
That's your... So, look, let's go through the practical answer then. 2018 is 6 years ago. So, first of all, have you got any bank statements that might include who you paid? That would be the first thing.
Okay.
Also, policies that are active stay on your credit file for 6 years. So clearly you wouldn't have paid it off 6 years ago. So it should still be on your credit file at the credit reference agencies, Equifax, Experian or TransUnion. Go get your credit reference file. That will detail who the lender is. Once you know who the lender is, you're starting on a path that you should be able to request information. And they should be looking, Nikhil, to try and locate information for you, even if you give them scant details, shouldn't they?
Absolutely. So they should be looking at all complaints that come in and seeking to address them. They'll take some time, but absolutely, if they have enough information, they should be looking for it.
And crucially, because it's within the last 6 years, they should still have that data on file. They should not have got rid of that data. So that would be does that help? Have you tried those, or is that helping?
I haven't, no, but yes, thank you, that does help. Thank you so much.
The biggest question we get is, I don't know my car registration, I don't know. Get as many details as you can. I mean, it makes it easier, as many details as you can. But if you know you had this, you know who you paid, that's the start point.
OK, brilliant. Helen, thank you for your question. After the break, the whole session is dedicated to Martin putting your questions to the head of the regulator. So we'll see you soon. Hello, welcome back to the show. Now, this is the part where Martin will be with Nikhil and they'll be talking everything car finance. Lots of questions to get through, so over to you.
OK, yes, I'm going to be asking the questions for once, not answering them. We've got quite a lot to get through. People have been sending them in. Nikhil, Karen says, my question is why people actually have to claim at all. If a customer was missold, they should automatically be given compensation.
Well, that's what we're looking at. In 2021, we banned discretionary commission arrangements, and now we're looking at whether those rules which we had in place before 2021 were broken. So we're looking at thousands of agreements to see what happened. Some of the lenders have also taken court cases about discretionary arrangements. We're waiting for those court judgments as well. And we're going to look at all of this in the round. And if compensation is due, there are different ways that could be dealt with. There could be a redress scheme for everybody, or we could only focus on people who've made complaints. And we'll take a view on that by May next year.
there is a chance you might say everybody who had this needs to get their money back and they don't have to apply.
We're going to look at this in the round once we have all the information and we know where the courts are coming from.
Wow. OK. Becky, my finance company told me unless I have the policy number, they can't process my claim for car finance mis-selling as it's over 7 years old and they've destroyed the financial data. What can I do now? I mean, that seems like they're playing a bit of a dodgy game there because she knows she's got a policy. She's got details of the policy clearly, and they're saying they've destroyed the data. That's not on, is it?
That's one of the reasons why it's going to take a bit of time for us to work out precisely what to do, because there'll be situations like this which we're going to take a look at and understand and then work out what the best course of action might be to make sure people are treated properly.
But they should be trying to find... They have a responsibility to try and find the details rather than to go, don't they?
They should, if they receive a complaint, they should be looking throughout their records to see what they have and then dealing with the complaint. Now, the situation you're talking about is where the customer has got evidence, but the firm can't find the evidence. So we're going to have to work out what the right way forward is for those types of complaints.
Well, from my memory in PPI, when similar things happen, what the Ombudsman decided in those cases is they would look at, if they didn't have the full records, they would look at similar cases from the same firm at the same time and say, well, on the balance of probability, you would have done the same thing with this customer, so we're going to go with that. So it's probably better it's on them. They should find the detail that will probably happen. I think that's plausible.
Well, there are different ways of looking at this, and so
I'll take that as plausible.
we're going to work it out.
OK, Jason, change of tone. I'd like to ask the FCA why, given this was a legal practice in 2007, they feel the motor trade is a target. They must know that difference in charges, DCAs, was around for decades and was legal. Dealers use commissions to allow on trade values as an example. In other words, to make prices cheaper because they were getting more commission. So Jason feels you're targeting the motor trade and this was known as legal. Why are you doing this?
We banned discretionary commissions in 2021, but there were rules in place around disclosures and transparency before then. So what we're looking at in that review is, were those rules being complied with? And we're looking at the thousands of cases I talked about to see if that is what happened.
But surely when you banned them, they were wrong, or you were saying it's other rules other than just selling discretionary commission arrangements that you're looking at in your investigation that may have been broken before?
That's right. The rules that were in place before 2021 did require a degree of transparency and disclosure, and we're looking at if they were met.
Now, one from me, although a lot of people have asked me it. Look, we're looking at this Court of Appeal ruling. Firms were not disclosing the amount and the full amount of commission, but they were obeying your rules, the regulators' rules. So firms have not breached regulators' rules and were doing what regulators told them, and yet they're now being told they acted illegally. Doesn't that make the FCA culpable for the problem that you had the wrong rules? Is some of the responsibility not yours?
There have been rules in place and clear protections in place, including around disclosures. We took a ban on discretionary commissions in 2021, but we're looking at whether the rules that were in place before 2021 were complied with. What the court has been looking at...
It's more about whether your rules were good enough at the time. Is it you who've made the error by not having the right rules in place?
What the court's been looking at is something they call the common law. And that's been an area that's been disputed. And there were different courts making different decisions about what the law was around whether commissions should have been disclosed and whether there should have been what they describe as informed consent to consumers. There were disputes. The Court of Appeal has come to a view. We'll see what the Supreme Court says. And obviously, our rules work alongside the law, and we don't decide what the final view of the common law is. That's for the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeal.
OK. I think that'll be a long-running particular dispute in the industry, I suspect, that one. Dave, when the car finance issue came out, I applied thinking it was the company I had my loan with. Turns out it was a company who wanted to do the work for me and charged 40% plus VAT for doing it. I've asked many times to cancel, but I've only had one reply saying they don't have a policy for cancelling claims. Am I stuck? Well, again, it sounds like that claims management firm is playing fast and loose. Now, some claims management firms are regulated by the FCA, you regulate them, and some are regulated by the Solicitors Regulation Authority. If this was one of your firms, again, they should have a cancellation policy. It sounds like they've not been transparent in the case. This is out of order, isn't it?
It sounds like there's a problem there. So if you've complained to this company and you're not satisfied, you can go to the Financial Ombudsman and they can look at all the details of your case and make a judgment.
So, yeah, you can complain about claims management company behaviour to the Ombudsman. What you need to do is you need to look at the bottom of the piece of paper on your form and see whether it's regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority or by the Solicitors Regulation Authority. If it's the SRA, not the FCA, then you need to go to the legal ombudsman is where you take your complaint, not the financial ombudsman. But either way, if you feel they've misbehaved, you can make a complaint and go to the ombudsman on the back end of this. Andy, so is car finance about to get a whole lot more expensive then?
It's what you said before, Martin, which is we have to make sure consumers who've had agreements in the past are fairly treated. But whatever we decide, and of course some of that will depend on where the courts get to, we want to make sure we've got a functioning car finance market in the future that's affordable for millions of people every year. And that's why we want to gather all this information, wait to see where the courts are, and then make a judgment as to what the right way forward is.
And do you think this potential ruling stretches beyond just car finance in future, as some people have said?
People have said that. The Court of Appeal has been clear that it's focusing on the facts before it, i.e. the car finance cases that they were looking at. I said in Parliament today that we are looking at the judgment to see if there are any wider implications, but most of our focus at the moment is on motor finance.
And I suppose that will wait until the Supreme Court anyway, which, assuming that there is going to be an appeal.
That's right.
And final one for you, Mac. Why does the date keep getting pushed back by months at a time? If you know people are owed money, why are the constant delays and pushbacks?
It takes time for the firms to provide all the data that we need, and there are hundreds of thousands of agreements here that need to be looked at. And also, there have been cases taken to court, both in relation to discretionary commissions and the Court of Appeal case that you talked about. They take time to be resolved. So what we've done is we've paused until December 2025 for discretionary commissions. We're going to pause the other complaints shortly so we can gather all the information and then make a clear decision as to what the best way forward is.
So, thank you very much. I mean, this is a £30 billion case. Car finance firms are worried about it. Consumers don't know what's going on. So I'd like to say thank you very much for coming on this show, for taking questions live, which no politician has ever yet agreed to do, and for trying to answer some questions. We really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you very much, Nikhil. And in the final part of the show, £200 bank switching bonuses, a new 0% balance transfer card, a warning on winter fuel payments, plus 15p supermarket veg. We'll see you after this.
Welcome back. We've been talking the potential thousands of pounds that millions of people may be owed from Car Finance Commission reclaiming. There are two cases, the DCA case that we talked about earlier on, which is more clear-cut. But then I asked you, in the latest court case, do you think it's fair that people try and get money back because of a technical ruling that the exact amount of commission wasn't disclosed to them? Has anyone got in touch with that?
Absolutely. People have definitely got opinions on this. Stephanie says, yes, absolutely, make a complaint. Something that is not disclosed. This is being dishonest. Why the need for dishonesty? Why not be transparent? If they were doing nothing wrong, why not tell the customer everything?
That's pretty clear-cut,
yeah.
Yeah.
That's Stephanie's opinion. Elliot says, I think you're right to advise the approach of caution when complaining about motor finance. I have a feeling that this will end up shooting us all in the foot and us generally being worse off in the future, tougher lending criteria, higher rates, etc.
Well, yeah, remember, I'm still I would go for a discretionary commission arrangement. I think not knowing that they were boosting up your interest rate without telling you, it, for me, crosses the line. But the other one is, I'm probably with Elliot on that, as I said earlier.
OK,
yeah.
Well, news you can use today. Let's see what we've got.
Totally change the subject. This is an urgent warning about the winter fuel payment deadline. For the first time this winter fuel payments for state pensioners are means tested. The payment's £200, £300 if you're older. To get winter fuel payment, you now need to claim and get pension credit. There are other ways to do it, but they're gone for this year. This is the only one left. The last date to apply is about 2 weeks away, a little less than 2 weeks away. But you must have been eligible 3 months ago, because this is effectively a backdated claim. So, who? Well, if you're a single state pensioner and you've got total income under £218 a week, you're very likely to get it. If you've got income under £235 a week, you may get it. If you get attendance allowance, that could be up to £300. Similar for a couple who are both state pension age, under £333 a week, total income likely to get, under £350 a week, may get. When I say may get, I'm saying still try. Still try. You might not get, but still try. And if you were to get attendance allowance again, the figure can be far higher. So what is income? Well, it's money from working, money from your state pension, money from your private pension, money from benefits. Savings under £10,000 don't count. Savings over £10,000, for each £500 over that you have, counts as £1 a week income. If only you could generate £1 a week income from 500 quid. But anyway, that's what it counts. It's complicated. If you don't understand, if you're not quite sure, but you're on a lower income pensioner, don't stall, just call. There's the phone number. It's a slightly different phone number for Northern Ireland. Or go to gov.uk and check. The worst that can happen is they say, I'm sorry, you're not eligible, sir or madam. That's it. I mean, they're not going to tell you off. You're not going to be fined for asking. Just go and check. Now, pension credit, we're talking about winter fuel payment, but pension credit itself is worth an average £4,000 a year to low-income pensioners, and it's a gateway benefit. That means it opens the door for help with council tax, TV licence, water, energy bills, glasses, discounts. There have been, since they means tested it, 150,000 new applications, so at least it's spurred more people to apply. But only 42,500 of them have been approved. Some others are delayed, and other people were just checking and they weren't eligible. So, look, I don't want to get too political. I've been on my soapbox about this before. But that still leaves approximately 700,000 eligible poorer pensioners with average incomes under £11,400 who the government thinks should get winter fuel payment but won't, which is why I think it is a bad way to means test, because this is a critically underclaimed benefit. But we can at least do one thing, which is make sure that collectively, together, all of us, talk to any low-income pensioner we know, or if you're a low-income pensioner, and say, have you called the pension credit hotline just to see if you're eligible?
Exactly that. I'll tell you what, Hillary has been in touch on this. After listening to you talk about pension credit, I applied for my 96-year-old mum who didn't think she'd be eligible. I received a letter a few weeks later to say she has been awarded £16.62 a week, backdated to June 10th. On top of this payment, mum will also get the winter fuel payment. A very big thank you to Martin for your encouragement too. Yeah.
So that's worth £1,000 in a year on average, working it out for a low-income pensioner. Be a Hillary, everybody. Just try it out. Be a Hillary. Yes. Am I moving on?
You can move on, please do.
OK, we've got time for a quickie. I've got 4 for you. I'm going to need to go quick. 3 of 5 banks likely to pull their free switching bonuses. Still on, First Direct, top customer service generally in ratings, pays 175 quid to switchers. Nationwide, also 175 quid. Ending midnight tonight, the biggest upfront cash bonus from Lloyds for switching to it. Make sure you read the eligibility criteria for all of these. Ending tomorrow, NatWest, the biggest total cash bonus over the first year. 180 quid up front, and then jumping through a few hoops, you get £3 a month on top, so that would be £216 over a year. Likely to end, my bet is sometime this week, maybe very soon. I always say it wrong. Santander, I can never do it. Santander Edge, £150. So if you want to switch bank account, they'll probably come back some of these in January, but they're going for now. So get your skates on. Tonight one goes. We've got a new longest no-fee 0% balance transfer. I talked about these last week. There's a better card. If you're shifting your debt to cut the cost, 0%. Barclaycard's now up to 40 months 0%. And you don't pay that one-off fee. However, some accepted applicants only get 7 months. So use an eligibility calculator. If you're pre-approved, then you'll definitely get the 14 months 0%. If you're not pre-approved, but you have decent chances of NatWest, well, that's either 12 or 10 months, so its worst option is better than the worst option on Barclaycard, so you might want to go for that instead. As always, with the balance transfer, clear all the debt shifted by the end of the 0% period, or the rate will jump up to around 25% APR. Never miss your minimum monthly repayments. Don't spend on the card, and don't use an ATM. The first one can get rid of your 0%, and those, well, you'll be paying interest on those in general. Let's scroll up. If you travel with Southwest trains from London 2015 to 2017, it's agreed out of court to pay £25 million. If you had a Transport for London travel card, because effectively it wasn't telling people that if you had a Zone 4 card, you should only be paying from Zone 4 onwards and buying a ticket there. It's called boundaryfares.com/claim by the 10th of Jan. Could be worth 30 quid to 100 quid, depending on the level of proof. In some cases, very little proof is needed. Worth checking that. And finally, something I mentioned in the festive forecaster a few weeks ago, still gives me nightmares, very scary to do. 15p Christmas veg starts next week. We have confirmation. There we go. Oh, there's the festive forecaster. Sainsbury's 18th of December, Aldi 19th of December. Cheap veg coming. I suspect more stores will do it, and that's news you can use.
Hey. Well, that was our last show of the year, but I know you've got something coming up next week you're very proud and excited about.
It's our last live show. It's my last live money show of the year, but at this time next week, 8 o'clock, I will be, and you will be watching, I hope, doing this. 7. Team red. Wow.
Let's play. If you want to beat your friends and family at board games, get ready. as I'm going to jam this show with tactics and strategies to give you the household bragging rights.
Very good.
Or at worst, comfort and confidence that you gave it your all.
I'm absolutely kicking myself. It's just unbelievable. I'm in jail.
We'll discover why 3 is the magic number in Connect 4. Monopoly hacks. What to buy, when to build, and how to speed it up. Serious nerddom. Why Scrabble's about the numbers, not the letters, as I face a Scrabble world champion.
I am very happy, everybody.
And to finish off, it's off to backgammon boot camp.
Yes, thank you. How to win at board games, 8 o'clock next week. Nikhil, I think you'll really like the return on investment analysis I did on Monopoly board properties.
Oh, very
it's really exciting. I'm not joking. That is in there, and it's very, very useful. So, look, this is our last show before the end of the year. I want to say thank you very much to everybody in production upstairs. Thank you to our audience here. Thank you to Jeanette, Nikhil. Thank you very much for coming with. And most importantly of all, a huge thank you to everybody at home for the questions and the successes and for watching and for being ambassadors for our show. This is a show that isn't about watching, it's about taking action. And when you do that, that's what gives me the buzz to do it. But I finish. I would like to wish all of you who celebrate a joyous, peaceful and warm-hearted Christmas and Happy New Year. But for those of you who find this time of year difficult or grief-filled or lonely, may your passage through it be easy with more smiles than you expect. See you in 2025.
Watch an epic battle as a courageous band of heroes embark on a daring mission in Rogue One, a Star Wars story, streaming now on ITVX. Next on ITV1, the 1% Club with Lee Mack.